Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian. Last week, the United States Marine Corps decommissioned one of its iconic squadrons and the legendary jet that it operated. Marine Tactical Electronic Warfare Squadron 2, better known as VMAQ-2, was retired along with the legendary Northrop Grumman EA-6B Prowler electronic warfare jet, a jamming aircraft that entered service in 1975 as a derivative of the U.S. Navy's A-6 Intruder bomber. An earlier jammer was known as the Electric Intruder and was a two-seat jamming aircraft that was replaced by the four-seat Prowler. We went down to Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, where VMAQ-2 is based, along with the Prowler, and talked to Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Grundy Rundle, the commanding officer of VMAQ-2. I asked him what made the jet and the unit so special. Talk to us a little bit about what is so special about the unit, and also so special about the mission and the aircraft.
Sure. The unit, as you stated, has been around for decades, even going back Korean War. As it was VMC, VMJ, combined to be a VMCJ2, and then in 1975, VMAQ2, and then as things evolved, Prowlers is the final airplane, 77 until now. It's been around for a lot of significant events in our history, militarily speaking, operationally wise. Not just this airplane, but the community itself. It's not one that we hear much about. It's not one that's made a lot of posters. It's one of those, it's a loud airplane, but it's kind of that quiet professional in the corner that it does a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to current and past operations, and just shows up and does the work. It's a heavily deployed airplane, high operational tempo, small community in the Marine Corps, and it's done tremendous things over its history.
And speaking of that history, right? I mean, the Sky Knight. You were pioneering radar. It was one of the fewer fighters in the Korean War, or that vintage, that had a radar. Had a number of kills, which differentiated itself. I think it was second only to the F-86 in the number of kills. Talk to us, and then of course the EA-6A, right, which was the first generation of the aircraft shaped and a derivative of the A-6 Intruder. What is it? When folks think about the electronic warfare spectrum, in a great power, it was designed at a great power competition, right? We were at the height of the Cold War when it was developed. Then we started using it in a very, very different way throughout its career. Talk to us about sort of the evolution of that mission, where you started off, and then how critical you were, whether it was countering IEDs or doing any one of a number of other things you were doing throughout the War on Terror, where you guys were an absolutely critical piece of what was going on, and yet the focus of it was not really on what you guys were doing, because it's a very highly classified mission.
Sure. So wiser and higher ranking people than I have coined or reused the phrase of, well, we do windows, right? So we go where we're needed, we do what's required. It's bread and butter Marine Corps. That's who we are for our nation's defense. As far as the mission of the airplane, traditionally a SEAD, suppression of enemy air defense platform, and still is capable of that. As the threat evolved, people that are smart ask questions, and we found a way to make our capabilities relevant to a fight that historically and traditionally wasn't the bread and butter of this platform, but largely was what we do and have done up until this point in time, supporting ground troops directly, not specifically indirectly through suppression of enemy air defense. So it was just a matter of necessity being the mother of invention, and Marines always improving their position. We have a capability. How can we be relevant to help?
And talk to us about the role of the ECMO in this. You're an ECMO. You're an electronic countermeasures officer, which are sort of the magicians of the electronic spectrum. Do you like that as a definition?
I don't know if I go that far, but yeah, I'm the backseat driver.
You're backseat. Yeah. But it's a unique crew airplane, right? I mean, you have to have one of the backseat guys in the backseat, because I think you have a critical fuse panel back there. So even if you're just doing a ferry ride, it's not like the stick can just jump in and take off, even though it's a single stick airplane. Talk to us about the crew dynamic, the importance of working it together, because there are guys who, not trying to take anything away from, for example, the Growler, the Navy is using two Growlers to do what you guys do in one jet right now. Again, not trying to slam the new jet. Talk to us about the dynamic and doing the mission.
The dynamic with four-seat aircraft, it can be challenging. I mean, as you can imagine, you've got one guy flying the airplane, you need him to go a certain place, you've got three other folks in there, each of us doing our own specific portion of the mission, or whatever facet that's been compartmentalized between those other seats. So if the guy in ECMO 2 in the back right and the ECMO in ECMO 3 in the back left needs something different, you can imagine with multiple radios, inter-cockpit communications, stuff going on the radios, there's a lot of yapping that can happen, right? So it takes a lot of comms discipline. It takes a lot of, maybe not so much training, but getting to know each other. So we don't always fly with the same crews, but you learn the value of sterile cockpit as far as the comms go, comm brevity, speak only when necessary, gestures from side to side. So if I'm sitting up front with a pilot and I need him to turn left and there's a lot going on the radio, I'll just tap on the leg and go that way, and I'll spin in the heading that I need him to go into. So that can be a challenge more so than I think a platform that has less people in it and less competing priorities, or at least for competing for the senses. For the actual mission of the airplane between us and the Growler per se, it's largely the same. It's just we've got more guys that can do it, guys or gals that can do it. Yeah.
But there is an advantage, right? I mean, this is unique in that you guys are sitting actually side by side, as opposed to the two folks in the back and two folks in the front can actually interact with one another.
We can, yeah, we can. Whether it's just the way that I mentioned, or it's pointing, or hey man, I've got this going on, or whatever. With the screens being redundant to a certain extent at the stations there. Yeah.
And you get a great view from the front. I mean, at least you got that, whereas the
way better.
Back view is not as good.
No, the back is not good. If you're not one that does all right with air sickness, you're going to have problems in the back of this airplane. And then just the aerodynamics of the airplane, the way it was designed, it doesn't do exactly what a traditional airplane does, roll about the axis of the aircraft. It actually, Grumman Ironworks' genius invention is the flaperon, unless I don't know if they invented it or not, but at least they put it on this airplane, where it stalls the lift on the wing and it just kind of drops. So it adds this really interesting moment to your body that if you're not used to it and you're in the back seat, you're going to have a hard time. Yeah.
So it's funny you should mention that, because that's one of the things which I think is interesting. So what are some other, so I want to get to Airborne electronic attack in a moment again, but what are some of the sort of different handling properties of this airplane that you thought, what are just cool things about the airplane that, as somebody who spent a career flying it, if you were telling a layperson, here are the 10 ways my airplane is a lot cooler than yours, so, okay, so you talked about the flaperon and the fact that like a wing abruptly drops, which does give you kind of an odd roll moment. So, what are some other interesting features of the airplane that you either love or are unusual or just hate?
Well, I don't hate anything about it. I love it. It's awesome. It's like a muscle car. It's loud. It's fast. It goes really fast down low. Without afterburner, we can go pretty fast down low compared to our other TAC Air brothers and sisters that have to really hit the afterburner. We can move. So that's pretty cool. The fact that it's so big and heavy. I mean, depending on what the fuel state on the airplane is, you're looking close to maybe 60,000 pounds, but it can scream. It doesn't handle all that great up high. I mean, if you're flying in the U2, you understand it. You feel like you're sitting on the head of a pin. If you're going really slow and you're at high altitude, I don't even feel like I'm moving, right? You don't even have that ground sensation, but that ground rush. But aside from the way that it turns, those are probably the highlights, and the fact that you can travel with a crew, right? It's a family truckster, so you've always got some air crew to spend some time with and make the time pass if you're doing a long transatlantic or long mission to and from where you're going to operate. It's there's a good camaraderie. It's a good thing we've got guys that all get along, right? The folks that I've been at the squadron for the past 16 plus years or so, there haven't really been any, thankfully, personality conflicts, right? But significant ones anyway.
But you also have gas range and enormous power that can come out of the system.
Mm-hmm. We do, yeah. All those, depending on how we got the drops on it, we can go pretty far. How many drop tanks we have, obviously all the other factors that come into play with winds and whatnot, but with a configuration like you see here, if we had 2 drop tanks and then weapon systems on the stores, you'd a couple hours, you could probably grape it maybe to 3, you know, so.
Let me ask you about the mission of Airborne Electronic Attack. I mean, you guys are a true repository of a lot of talent. And, you know, as the last commander of the last squadron, you know, how important is it to preserve these skill sets from the pilot side of things, especially from the ECMO side of things, because Marines have been such pioneers in this field. Each of the services has brought their own part of the equation. The Navy now has that capability agreement back in '96, where the Navy operated the jets and then all the services contributed crews to it. The Marines weren't party to that, but you guys still maintain the jets and are going to be the last ones to fly this. There's a big Hornet contingent. There are some airmen, Air Force guys that are out there, but the Navy is more looking at the jets that it has to operate off the carrier and for battle fleet purposes, less from an expeditionary perspective. You know, how important is it to preserve these skills? The Marines have Intrepid Tiger. There's going to be a capability on the F-35, but they're not quite what you guys do, which is just a tremendous, unique, but very important mission.
Maintaining the talent was something that I felt was very important. My Sergeant Major and I, even from before the date I took command, it was something we were talking about. The Marine Corps has worked with us and our predecessors to try to find ways. It's not in our nature to just take a whole group and say, hey, everybody gets to stay. It's competitive for reenlistments and lat moves, and we want to make sure we retain the best of the best. We have a lot of those here. We have I'm biased for them, obviously, because I'm very proud of all of them, but we've worked very hard to help in the back and forth with that. So thankfully, the Marine Corps did have a plan for some of these transitions, whether it's an enlisted Marine maintainer with a Prowler-specific MOS, or whether it's air crew that could meet the criteria that would be worth the investment in that person for another platform per se. We've had some good luck with that, and we have a lot of good Marines that are going to go into other things and hopefully take that knowledge with them. For the maintainer side, a lot of it will be their leadership skills and their maintenance acumen that they're going to take with. For the air crew that are going, they're going to hopefully be some type of seed corn for the advocate in the ready room that they go to and say, look, we need this, guys. This is not something that we can just wish away. We have to give homage, if you want to. Maybe that's the wrong word, but we have to consider the airborne electronic attack piece. Who do we need to talk to for this thing? How are we covering down on this? So that advocacy hopefully is good, and they're successful in it, because then it'll permeate into those ready rooms. The downside is we don't have the one-stop shop in the MAGTF now for airborne electronic attack. As I have a EW question, and you go to find an ECMO or a Prowler pilot. So it's I hate to say it is what it is. It's one of those things that I think it's, as we evolve in our Marine TAC era, as just about every platform is we're going to be in a period of transition in the next decade. This is something that we're going to have to make sure that we pay attention to as a service, and in those squadrons and individually, those air crew are going to have to respect the fact that this is now something that falls in their wheelhouse, and they don't have somebody that's that duty expert that they can call for EW stuff.
But is there a risk with that? I mean, if we're looking at returning to where we are in great power competition, we have adversaries that really are focusing on the electronic attack piece from their standpoint to disrupt us throughout the electromagnetic spectrum. I think Admiral Greener deserves a lot of credit. He was one of the people talking about the importance of the electromagnetic spectrum when he was Chief of Naval Operations. But we heard similar language coming from Commandant Hagee, and on sort of understanding the challenge and the problem. Is the Marine Corps at potential risk when it doesn't have this kind of a potent capability, as the whole organism begins to focus on that critical combat domain, really, is what it's going to be in the future?
I think Marine Corps-wise, we are talking about that as a service. We hear the similar things from our leadership as well as we move into next period of things. I don't know. I think as we evolve with the AV plan, I'll just talk specific aviation, but as we evolve with the AV plan, there are going to be things that we will need to, there will be transformative ways in which we fight our service. And this just may be a part of that, where leadership is talking about this. We need to make sure that we hear what they're saying and we make the mental leap to action at the tactical level in the squadrons and to ensure that those things are considered. But I think it'll be, you mentioned Intrepid Tiger, as we evolve with things, that is an evolutionary type solution to the loss of this aircraft, at least a portion of its capabilities. So I think it's going to be part of that AV plan as we move. We're going to have to develop that transformation.
And how many people from the unit are now going to some jobs? Because the Marine Corps now is working to preserve some of these capabilities, and so folks are going to different places. Talk to us about your folks, where you're going to go, and what's next for you. Because you always want to hope that there's going to be a bright future for somebody, even if they are the last CO of a legendary unit.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of Marines that have already gotten accepted for lateral moves on the enlisted side or transition conversion on the aircrew side. So we have, now there have been previous that have done this over the past 5-6 years, where they have the boards that accept folks. So we have Prowler folks that have infiltrated other platforms, hopefully being successful in their service in these new airplanes. But from here in my tenure, we've had 3 pilots go F-35. We've had a couple of Hornet pilots, Prowler pilots go become Hornet pilots. We've had some ECMOs go to flight school to become pilots themselves, and have found themselves going to C-130s, F-35s, a whole smattering of them. We've got one that just went to be a Wizzo in the backseat of a Delta, and we have a UAS operator from this last board. So there are Prowler aircrew. The knowledge is being retained. It's up to them to keep pushing it. For our enlisted Marines, we have a whole lot of them going F-35, of those that have time on their contract or have re-enlisted to do that. We've got a good amount going there, and then we have some going to things that aren't aviation related. They've made a good case on to make a change and go reinvent themselves. So they're going to other things outside of aviation. You name the MOS, we have probably onesie twosies, but the lion's share are staying with the wing.
And what's next for you?
Yeah, so for me, I'm still working with the monitor on it, but I would like to keep doing something where I can continue to contribute, or at least be a voice in the room to discuss the EW piece, where I can be one of those advocates for the consideration of it, and we don't just forget about the importance, even though it's always been something quietly there in the background.
Yeah, I mean, the Marine Corps deserves a lot of credit, because irregular warfare was something that was organic, and the surface remembered it. Certainly hope that electronic warfare is one of those things that the Marine Corps remembers and nurtures and continues to be thinking about, so that the whole Joint Force doesn't end up in a situation where we have to relearn and call you back out of retirement, and be like, hey, Grundy, we need you and guys like you to come back, sir. Oh. And you're going to be on the last jet, so talk to us about the very last flight, right? The very last flight is to the National Air and Space Museum.
Yeah, so fortunately, once we got back from deployment, we sent 3 airplanes out to AMARG in the desert at Davis-Monthan. And then the realization kicked in that if I want one of these things, I want it to get delivered by air instead of have to put on a truck and all this type of stuff. So a lot of folks that were passionate about that started working with the proper channels, and we got told that we have one. We flew it to MAPS Museum at Akron, Canton. They have a real nice museum there. And then we've got another one on Tuesday following the ceremony, is going to the Frontiers of Flight, which is at Dallas Love Field. And then on Thursday, we're going to take this airplane behind me up to Dulles, and it's going to go to the Udvar Hazy, I think I said that right, at the National Air and Space Museum. So we're very excited to at least keep the history of it alive, even if it's going to be everything boxed up and put away and the squadron's going away with nothing to fly and all that. We're going to have something that people can still at least remember and know what it did.
And how does it feel to be sunsetting the airplane, and what are the emotions that are going through you as somebody who's spent an entire career in a very close-knit community that other people don't understand as well as you guys do.
Yeah, it's a bit of a niche, right? It's close community. Bittersweet's the only word that's really coming to mind, right? There's something to be said about being part of something, and then as a steward of it, whether you're the CO or you fill another function in a unit or an organization, and then you move on to something else, and it's still there, and you can say, you know, I left it better than I found it, or I carried on what my predecessor did. There's something to be said about how that makes you feel, the value of that. To close it down, there's nothing any of us could have done. I mean, the train was on the tracks, right? And it had an expiration date. So it's mixed. I'm very proud to be a part of it. I'm humbled to work with the people I've been fortunate to work with. It's been a tremendous privilege to be the commanding officer of this squadron. It's the last one, and I think I pinch myself every once in a while for the opportunity. I can't believe I've had this opportunity. It's been tremendous. It's mixed with. I'm really proud and excited that I was able to do it. I'm excited to have a reunion with a lot of these folks that are going to be here throughout those generations that we were talking about. But I'm also, it's kind of sad to see it go, that there's not going to be a Marine with a can-do easy patch doing something needed overseas when the nation calls in the future. It's just kind of, that's it, you know. So hopefully we celebrate it and send it off on the right note. And then we can all turn to the future and move on to other things.
Sir, thanks very much. Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Grundy, Rundle.
Yes, sir.
Sir, thanks very much. Thank you
you
very much. One of the coolest airplanes in history, just a tremendous unit, and look forward to crossing paths, fair winds following season, whatever you do.
Thank you.